Warm welcome, you're watching India Today and our special series To Hell and Back during this COVID crisis. Viewers, we all know stories of abject tragedy, abject grief. Nearly all of us also know someone who's entered the COVID tunnel, been at the brink, but seen light at the end of the tunnel and walked back. As we've documented grief through the course of the last 2 weeks, we must document hope, because hope floats. And one such story of hope is the story of journalist Shoma Chaudhary and her husband Aditya Puri.
जो भी बोल रहा है कि ऑक्सीजन अवेलेबल है, सब झूठ बोल रहे हैं. देयर इज टोटल chaos.
कह रहे बाहर से आ रही ऑक्सीजन, बाहर से आ रही ऑक्सीजन, बाहर से आ रही, तो क्यों नहीं मिल रही हम लोग को?
If there is hell on earth, it is this. And then there are those who have walked this sea of gloom, been through hell and back. And as we document grief, it is all too important today to document hope, the story of triumph.
Really seeking hospitalization. So I called up these guys and I was like, why are we waiting for an import? You're not talking to Atishi.
Shoma Chaudhary is a celebrated journalist. She lives in South Delhi with her husband Aditya Puri and their 2 sons. But it's also so unpredictable, this virus. You just...
Oh my God, you don't know how it's going to get you.
What's privileged would be the textbook definition. But the pandemic has been the biggest leveler. Leaves no distinction between privilege or wanting.
It's
12th April, Aditya developed a headache, and from there began this family's journey through COVID hell and back.
Chemist to chemist, get 4 pills from here, get 8 pills.
April 30th, Aditya was discharged from hospital. The quiver in his voice marks his 18-day COVID trajectory.
It started off with a bad headache, and then fever, headache, fever, and some pressure on the lungs, and a lot of body ache, acute body ache, and then the fever kept going higher. So that's when one knew that this is probably COVID.
This was a case, it all happened in a day's time, or it happened?
It started with headache and then body ache, and then, yeah, by the next day I had fever.
You knew it was COVID in your head?
We kind of knew it was COVID. I mean, one kept kind of initially being in denial, maybe it's viral fever, and maybe it's not COVID, but looking at things around, the symptoms were pretty much like COVID.
Were you scared? Initially? Or you thought it was a mild case and it'd be okay?
No, one thought it was a mild case and one would just kind of sail through it, or just, have a couple of crocins, keep the fever down.
And by day 3, he had high fever, but more than that, what was scary was that his face became yellow and like swollen, and there was he was in and his threshold of pain is very high. Like, he has to be seriously in distress for him to say it's 1 on the Richter scale, But he kept saying, okay, I'm screwed. And that started to worry me.
By day 6 or day 7 is when things started, like oxygen levels really started dipping.
Course of the disease is like a rodeo ride, because you peak and then things get better and you think, okay, we've got this, and then suddenly something else happens. So, he's been ill for almost 18 days, and it was like a roller coaster ride right through, because it was just like peaks and troughs. Then we realized his blood work was frightening actually, and here, so we were in a lull. where we thought we were over it. But, you know, his CRP marker was at 200 when the normal range is 0 to 6. And his markers were at 200, you know. And his CT scan was not very high compared to what people are getting, but it was 10 on 25.
It was over to Shoma. I mean, she was just going crazy, you know, and trying to organize things.
But I made a round of calls and, you know, general, and there was just no beds available. And that's when one started to get a true sense of crisis. I mean, it so happened, you know, at each juncture, one has really been saved, Preeti, by just the professionalism of strangers, community action, compassion, you know.
Obviously, everybody around me was really scared. Shoma was very scared. And the family was getting pretty panicked. And because, I mean, there was, you know, to find a hospital bed, etc., medical, I mean, all of it was difficult. So
we couldn't, but I drove out at 12:30 at night. Alone? Alone. It was already curfew, and you know, it was like a war zone. Yeah, there was just, that's when, up until then...
12:30, Shoma, to find a hospital bed for your husband?
No, by then I knew there were no hospital beds, but my doctor then said that start him on the steroids, you know, so at least oral steroids, because up until then we were on azithral and, you know, ivermectin and basic combiflans and stuff like that. So she said, if you can't get a hospital, he needs to be on steroids, like now, you know. So it was curfew, you don't have your stuff. So then they said, but it's not a problem, why don't you just do it yourself? And I said, I can't do this myself. But they were so sweet, they just calmed me down and they said, you can give it yourself, it's just a subcutaneous injection. So they actually taught me, you know, just like how to do it. And then of course I came back and
so at 1 o'clock at night you were standing learning how to
give an
injection to your husband.
Yeah, and you know, then of course online you do, and that way one was calm, you know. So I did for the next 5 days I was doing his morning evening injections, you know.
Yeah, the 7th day, the day I was shifted to the hospital, was pretty bad, yes.
I called him at 4 and now over a week he had been in contact. So when I called him at 4, he was like, okay, now this, you really do need to hospitalize him. And it so happened, like, you know, it's just a game of chance. It just so happened that someone was discharged right at that moment. And because this had now become an emergency situation, that we could get taken in. Reached the hospital, I now, it's like a detail that as we reached, there was a body coming out, you know, and you just like, it's...
yeah, your heart sinks,
yeah,
you know, at that moment.
There was a woman right in front of me. She was in a very bad shape. She was on a ventilator, gasping for breath, and it was horrible. We could communicate through, as if I couldn't speak because my lungs were in a bad shape and I didn't have the energy to speak. I think gradually I kept improving and they kept lowering the oxygen levels. And the doctors kept saying that we have to keep lowering it. You know, your body has to start working. I think it was day 10 or day 11 in the where the oxygen level started improving. It started coming to about 91. I think that there's a good chance of survival for people, but you have to get oxygen on time. Without oxygen, it would have been devastating. And get the right kind of, we were lucky to get the right kind of medical facilities. You should not give up, and things, it suddenly turns. I mean, you're kind of on your way down and you stabilize, and things, it just suddenly turns and you start getting better.
While very little is known of the virus, I have seen and heard enough to know when an individual, a family, enters into the COVID tunnel, it is a blip. Everything fades. The disease and its anxiety takes over. The surround sound is all too overwhelming. But it is important to know there is light at the end of that tunnel.
The pruning that everyone is talking about.
You should not give up, and it suddenly turns. I mean, you're kind of on your way down and you stabilize, and it just suddenly turns and you start getting better. It's like a tipping point. So you have to just hang in there till that tipping point and not give up.
Like you said, because they really have
Reporting with video journalist Hitesh Kumar, Preeti Chaudhary for India Today.
people who love you around you.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching Hell and Back, and let's take you now to the city of Mumbai. A story of grit, survival and courage. A family of 3 get infected with coronavirus. The parents tied by, they think the worst is over. And then their little girl is rushed to the hospital. This is where their journey to hell began. This is the story of Janmit Singh, his wife Taruni Khukreja, and their little daughter Tanaya. Living in Mumbai, all 3 tested positive. They recovered, but their 6-year-old daughter Tanaya got multi-system inflammatory syndrome, a serious condition linked to COVID-19. This is their story to hell and back.
We are blessed with a single child, our daughter Tanaya, who actually had to go through a very, very rough time last month.
Hi, Tanaya.
Hi. It all started from 28th of March. Suddenly we all started having high fever, along with severe body ache, shivering. My wife started puking, and it's a matter of 24 hours that both of us were on bed. We speculated it's COVID. Immediately, in fact, what we did was we isolated ourselves. We got our test done, and the tests were positive. While we recovered through it pretty well, in fact, during the entire phase, our daughter really didn't show much of symptoms because there were only a few rashes. She had some arterial rashes, and that was it. Yes. We went through this entire journey. In fact, and on the 16th, our flats BMC sealed opened up. We were very happy, and we never knew that the worst was yet to come.
And 18th, after that's technically on the third week, is when she got fever, and I think we did raise an alarm because though we were certain it's not COVID, somehow we were certain that she's done with COVID, but we knew that there has to be a correlation. And then I think the next day itself, we showed her to the doctor. While the doctor speculated that it might be MISC, while this is very rare in kids, but still.
What is MISC? Janmit, would you
it's also known as PMIS,
yes,
which is pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome, which is a post-COVID complication.
In fact, what we have been made to understand is, during the COVID period, what we generate is antibodies. So once the COVID is over, these antibodies help us to fight against any recent or occurrence of COVID, primarily for a period of 3 months. In a child case or a kid's case, what really happened with her was the antibodies got generated, but along with those antibodies, there were certain other harmful antibodies which got generated as well. Now, because of these harmful antibodies getting generated, these started affecting all the parts of the body.
Taruni, she had 103, 104 for 4 days.
3 days, first 3 days, because the third day itself, and it was every 5 hours she would get that fever. So when we spoke to the doctor on the third day, though technically she told us to wait for 3 days, and 4th day is when she takes a call and does all the investigations further. But we called her up in the evening, and she also guided us before we could prompt her. She told us that let's get her hospitalized, because maybe if she's getting after every 4 hours, it's not a good sign, being the third day evening. So 20th itself, the third day, we got her hospitalized, and that's where her markers were checked. So like he said, the CRP, which was 211, all her parameters were haywire, which made them to, then the diagnosis was confirmed that this is surely PMIS or MISC as they call it. So then that's how I think the treatment started.
So in fact, they didn't really jump on to a heavy dose of steroid. First, what they did, they started off with a treatment called immunoglobulin IV. So that's a 12 hours continuous intake of IV. And what was speculated was that in the next 24 hours, she should ideally show some improvement.
Fever should go off, is what the doctor told us in the next 24 hours.
So that treatment happened. We waited for 24 hours. The blood tests were done, and what was figured out was that instead of recovery, the parameters even went more haywire. So it was a worrisome situation for everyone.
CRP shot up.
So the first level of treatment didn't really work for her. And then the other...
So the CRP was back to 111.
Back to where we started. So that's the time, that was where the anxiety element also came in. For the first time, though we knew that we are on time.
Are you a brave child?
She can't hear you.
I can.
Actually, you can hear her through Zoom.
Okay.
Are you a brave child?
Yes.
So you are...
Yeah.
Yes. Well, you have to be a very brave child.
And IV flashes also they did.
Yeah.
What all did they do to you?
IVs and flashes of IVs and pricks. IV pricks and flashes they did to me.
And you were brave and you said, do it if I have to get better very quickly.
Yes, I was very scared.
Not really, in fact. Not really, in fact.
How much you weighed?
That was... in fact, she used to scream.
It was painful a lot.
But I would also be very scared, it's horrible. But you're better now.
Yes, I'm better. Coming back home.
And you're such a brave girl. Yes. So Taruni, when all of this was going on, I want to ask you, what was going through your mind as a mother?
Though I was also brave initially, but then I think I couldn't stop, feeling absolutely uneasy. I mean, things were like slipping off my hands, I thought. After 4 days. Initially, doctor assured us that this is a global treatment and this will work. And though we trusted, we had also read up in that time being, we knew we were in the right track, right time, right place. But yes.
What hospital was she in?
Army hospital in Powai. So it's in our vicinity. And she was treated by Dr. Bijal, a very good doctor, I would say. Very, very prompt with her timelines and...
In fact, a very hands-on doctor, I really appreciate we were in very, very safe hands. Everybody was very cooperative, and the best part was that everybody was very focused that with a single line of thought that they have to do the best for this child. And that's very, assuring for any parent.
But
that gives a lot of strength.
But I remember on 24th when she made us step out and she told us about the levels going, worse. She told us, I'm shocked. So I said, if you are shocked, I don't know. I mean, I don't believe it either. What's happening? What's going to happen? And now I'm really scared. And of course, I couldn't help tears rolling down. And she says, but why are you scared? She's looking better, right? Clinically, have faith. We have another line of treatment, which we will do. And just give us some time. And immediately we rushed off for echo, the heart echo, which was earlier also done. Fortunately, that during the echo, we were very restless. But of course, after the echo, when the echo reports were fine, the heart was moving in the right direction. I think our heartbeats got controlled then. And that's when the next course of action of steroids was decided.
And the steroids immediately worked.
Janmit, did you have a heartbreak moment in all of this?
Yes, I did. In fact, to be very honest, when she got admitted, I was quite hopeful that she would improve. The first level of treatment will work. And yes, I mean, once the first level of treatment really didn't work out well, and the parameters were just haywire, and there was inflammation, and again, there were some inflammations which were even related to a heart, and it was pretty serious. And then again, there was a major inflammation in the intestine, the gut region. So that was pretty scary. In fact, I have had the scariest moments during these 8 days of hospitalization. But yes, I mean, with the blessings and wishes of lot of well-wishers and family members and friends, and I mean, definitely with the right type of treatment which really went through the hospital, it really helped us. So in fact, though I was scared, but I was pretty sure that we are in safe hands.
Taruni, when did she turn that corner? When you know that, okay, we've been through hell, but now we are walking back.
Yeah, you go. That was when...
Okay, say bye before you go. And give a message to all those children who are right now maybe like you in a hospital or are not feeling well. What do you want to say to them?
Just be brave.
Loudly.
Huh?
Just be brave.
That be brave? Okay. We're not going to hold you. Go.
Say bye.
Bye.
Janmit, how long was her entire ordeal? It said you said 18th of April it started.
We got admitted on the 20th, and we got discharged on 29th. And while she got discharged, she's done. She has improved a lot, of course, but she's still under treatment. Earlier, the worst part was that she was not able to orally take medicines and food, so she was absolutely dependent on IV. The best part and the most assuring part, which happened first for me, was when she started consuming food orally, and she was not throwing it out. And again, importantly, when she even started consuming medicines, because one horrifying episode of this entire period was that she got into a lot of phobia, because what happens is every child has got its own physical structure. So in her case, the challenge which even doctors were facing was of finding the right vein while putting an IV and while taking blood for a blood test. So because of these repeated syringes and fixtures, what really happened was initially that she was like okay for the first 1 or 2 days, but then she really became paranoid. In fact, she started having nightmares, and she would sleep and start shouting, don't do it, don't prick me, and all that. So that was the level of trauma which the child was going through. One was definitely fighting the disease, and the second thing was this phobia, because whenever she would see a sister or a doctor coming up with a needle, she would absolutely get scared, and she would start howling. So that was a tough time as a parent for us. But yes, once she started taking medicines orally, we were like, that was one of a comforting moment for us, of course.
Janmit, what would you say to somebody who's suffering today?
Sure. So somebody who is suffering, the first thing is there is no point, getting paranoid about things. It's important that a person keeps up to their senses and logically think, get in touch with the right doctor, take all the precautions. So one should really avoid panic. That really doesn't help in any ways.
I think that's a big thing. Yeah, avoid panic. That's big.
Because at the end of the day, there are certain things which are in your hand. One should do that, and there are a few other things which you can't really control. So that you should leave it on faith. So that's what my belief is. And the second part, again, what I really feel is that there are a lot of, as you said, there are a lot of horrible stories which we hear every day. We have seen our loved ones also, landing onto these hospitals, suffering a lot, and even lost a few loved ones also in this entire course of time. But I sincerely feel that this horrifying stories in one way helps, because out of that fear, people start taking precautions. But there is a brighter side to it as well, because while the horrifying stories tempt people to take precautions, take care of hygiene, use the guard. But apart from that, these brighter stories really bring a lot of faith in people, and that is something which is very important.
And that's the reason I wanted to talk to the both of you, because you're a silver lining, in a city which is filled with so much distress right now, and one must look at the silver lining. You must document hope when you document grief. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your family to take up the time, even now when I know you have to take care of your child. But thank you so much, and I really appreciate it. We reached the end of our first edition of Hell and Back, viewers. But we're going to keep reporting these stories because they are important. As, like I said, we document grief on a daily level. We've got to document hope, because that keeps us afloat. A quick break. Do stay with us. News and updates on the other side.